Welcome to Property Showcase, the podcast that brings you closer to the service providers that can inform your decisions about how you buy, manage and research top investment opportunities. Be informed and become a better investor with Property Showcase.
Hello everyone, Grace Ormsby here. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Property Showcase. One of my favourite chances to get to sit down with people that are doing some pretty cool things in the investing space. And one of those people is Lorna Wang. Lorna, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Grace.
Nice to meet you too. You have done other SPI shows previously, but it's the first time I've managed to wrangle you into the studio with myself.
Yeah, I've done 2 so far, but yeah, first time meeting you, but definitely heard a couple of your episodes in the past for sure.
I'm so keen to hear your story, Lorna, because you've been with InvestorKit for a year now. Is that you? Because you started as an investor yourself and then you've moved into the buyer's agency space.
Yeah, so I've worked with InvestorKit for almost a year now, but recently I did launch my own brand, which is lornawang.com.au under their umbrella. So since I've started with the business, I've actually seen a lot of different types of clients.
Congratulations on making that move to have your own brand. But besides what we're going to be talking about today, how has that experience been for yourself?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's definitely been hard work, lots of learning, but overall, I really enjoy it, and it's definitely a field that I'm particularly interested in. So, yeah.
So who are the types of people that you've been working with since you've launched Lorna Wang?
The types of clients that I've been seeing, they typically are ones that are just starting out. They want to try and build a portfolio, and I'm seeing a lot of young Sydney-siders that are coming to us who, yes, they want to build a portfolio, but they're really focused on trying to save some money using the First Home Buyers Assistance Scheme.
Because it's pretty daunting, I think, for any young Sydney-sider to be looking at buying property, let alone when you're living in one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yeah, especially right now with the median house price in Sydney, it's just over $1.3 million according to CoreLogic. So it is fairly unaffordable. Yeah.
So let's talk through this scheme because you're obviously finding some success with it. And so what is this First Home Buyers Assistance Scheme and how can you be putting it in place?
So with this scheme, it started in July 2017 to help people buy their first home. And since then, it's actually recently been updated by the New South Wales Labor government. So as of the 1st of July 2023, the revision had increased the stamp duty exemptions for properties up to the value of $800,000, which is up $150K from when the scheme first started. Now, with the stamp duty concession rate, that also went from $800K to $1 million. So right now, the maximum potential savings is $31,000, which is actually quite a large sum of money, especially for a first home buyer. And to be honest, it definitely seems very attractive to take on. However, there's obviously caveats involved with taking advantage of the benefit.
I was going to say there's probably some catch here.
Yeah.
Where can you be, applying this? What kind of investor, I guess, fits the mould for taking on this First Home Buyers Assistance Scheme?
Look, when it comes to the type of investor, it actually, you can't be an investor to utilise this scheme.
That's a very good point.
So, yeah, in order to actually take on the benefit, the person, it has to be their first property they own. So it could be an existing house, it could be a new build or vacant land. It also has to be the buyer's primary residence within the first 12 months of buying. And they also have to continuously live in it for 12 months, which has actually increased from the original 6 months that was previously required.
What kind of clients then are taking these on? Because there are obviously those conditions that people need to be fitting within. How many people are you seeing actually take it up successfully?
Well, if you are purchasing, I guess, a unit in Sydney, then yes, the $800,000 can be met. But a lot of the time when it comes to houses, and especially if someone is looking to invest, a lot of the time, they are doing their research beforehand and they do see that when it comes to freestanding homes, they have the best capital growth over any other property asset. So typically, you can't really find something for less than $800K in terms of a 3-bed house.
So, I mean, is there any gold out there for people that are looking?
Well, I actually did have a look on realestate.com. So I did a kind of like a mini exercise, and I did see that there were, over the past 30 days, there were about 150 properties that transacted for less than 800K in the Sydney region that were 3-bed freestanding houses.
Wow. So there are some slim pickings, but there are some out there.
Mm.
Let's move on now, Lorna, to yields and what people are looking for, because we are an investing podcast. People are here trying to find out, how to get the best bang for their buck. And in a portfolio, yield is important. When people are looking at a scheme like the First Home Buyer Assistance Scheme that is operational in New South Wales, I'm guessing you're also tightening your potential for yield.
Yeah, when it comes to building a property portfolio, rental yields are really an important factor to help you scale. And Sydney is notorious for its really low rental yields. And according to SQM research, the median yield for a 3-bed house at the moment is 2.8%. And yeah, this is actually up from an all-time low back in December 2021, where it was 2.4%. So even if an investor buys in Sydney and eventually turns the property into a rental, with yields like this, it can impact your future borrowing and also therefore your ability to build a property portfolio. So to take on a government incentive to just save you up to $31,000 up front, it is actually quite short-sighted, because when it comes to property, it is really all about the long term.
So much to think about. And that comes back to that due diligence, I'm guessing. Before you even make the purchase, you need to be weighing up the pros and the cons of these kind of decision making.
Yeah, and another important factor, definitely the due diligence. Not all of these 150 properties are going to pass due diligence checks, and that in itself is going to eliminate a lot of those properties. And personally, with us, we have a 21-point checklist, which, would eliminate a lot of the properties in the market. And, some of those detractors that I'd personally want to avoid include properties that are close to noise or traffic pollution, in your industrial areas, or in less attractive neighbourhoods, as well as a few others. And even right now, another point is a lot of the time, even with the clients that I'm currently working with, they often still get caught up on the emotional side of investing. And, it's my role to play to kind of guide them back into that investor mindset. And from my own personal experience, I remember the first time when I was working with Arjun as an InvestorKit client. I remember for myself, I almost said no to a property because it didn't have robes. Now, thankfully, I was actually guided back into the right mindset for investing, because that property's seen almost 70% in capital growth in nearly 4 years.
Wow. So, I mean, there's definitely something in not letting your emotions take control. And that's why people like Lorna are there. The professionals are there to help guide you on that road and that path to investing. And it would be interesting, because I'm sure you get a lot of people that do come to you and go, hey, there's this scheme and I think it's going to be right for me. And how often do you then turn around and go, actually, let's take a step back and consider what you really want for the future here?
Yeah, a lot of the time, people, I think, when they see $31,000 potential savings, it kind of blinds them in wanting to go down that path, because it's really hard to save for a deposit, right? $31,000 is a lot of money. And to let that go, especially for a first-time buyer, it is hard in a way. But when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to building a portfolio, especially the right way, it doesn't make sense.
And I feel like as well, it comes back to the fact that we're operating in, it's a tricky property landscape at the moment. We're going to chat through this, but there's obviously issues with supply. There's issues with interest rate rises. We're seeing, people that bought 4 or so years ago that now are paying interest rates on their mortgage that are 4, 5, 6% higher than they had budgeted in for the next 5 years. That's all on people's minds as well. So what's the kind of situation you're seeing with supply? Because then, if there's only 150 homes that potentially even fall into that scheme, the luck's against you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, right now, like there is a huge shortage of properties in Australia, and to limit yourself, like not only due to location, but a price bracket that is barely obtainable in Sydney, it is definitely going to hurt you as an investor, because when it comes to property investing, like the wealth isn't created immediately when you buy it. It's really about the compounding efforts of that 5 to 8% over a decade or two. That's really where the wealth is created. And when it comes to interest rates, right now, with the rapid rise of them, people's borrowing capacity, they've diminished by, almost 40% in 1.5 years. And often these first home buyers that I'm seeing that are coming to me, they're typically still really early in their career, and they're often wanting to stretch themselves and use the upper limit. And especially right now, being a Sydney-sider, you don't have to take on a government handout. It's not about focusing to try and save up to $30,000 by limiting yourself and making sacrifices in terms of like the asset type or location, or like your comforts, your yields, due diligence, those sorts of things. You can actually look across all of Australia right now, because 46% of houses in the country right now are still less than $700,000. So that's nearly half of Australia.
I think it just really hits home the importance of a mindset shift. And that's what you're obviously having to deal with day in, day out with your clients, showing them that there's other ways of doing things.
Yeah, for sure. There's, everyone has their own way of doing it, of course, but, when it comes to having that professional guidance, they're there to kind of lean on. They're there to help. They're there for you to lean on and kind of consult with as well. And
Lorna, I imagine when we are looking at prices that low, given how high prices in Sydney are, you mentioned there's a few interesting properties that would be available at that price point. A makeover is probably putting some of those quite lightly.
I did have a look at those properties that were online, and some of those were a fair bit older where, you'd need to do a complete makeover. So things like a brand new kitchen, bathroom, flooring, paint, that sort of thing. So, that would definitely add tens and thousands of dollars on top. So a buyer, they would need to put in more capital to get the property up to an attractive, livable standard. And when it comes to these sorts of properties, it's not just about the cost of renovating. Quite often people underestimate the work and stress involved when it comes down to it, because, renovating, it is a whole other job on top of a potential 9 to 5 as well. And people out there actually do this for a living as well. And when it comes to renovating, we also often do hear of timelines taking longer than expected. So especially right now with the current economy, many tradespeople, they have the pick of the work they want to do. And, often their timelines are limited or their availability is limited. And on top of this, we all know labour isn't cheap in Australia. So yes, there is a potential to DIY, but it doesn't always work out. And so, these sorts of things, they can blow out, and people do underestimate the potential for things to go wrong as well, which obviously adds to the stress if things haven't been budgeted properly. Yeah,
and I'm guessing that if you are looking at this scheme, your budget's already probably pretty tight. So then you're going to have to be factoring in another extra, tens of thousands of dollars, as you mentioned. So some really interesting perspective there. You mentioned from the outset that you branded out on your own. How can people reach out to you if they relate to what you've been talking about today and they've had these questions or they're not sure where to take their future long-term planning?
Yeah, so if they would like to reach out to me, you can catch me on LinkedIn and search up Lorna Wang. Otherwise, you can also follow me on Instagram, which is a bit more on the personal side of things, but I also do provide a lot of property education as well, and that handle is lornawang.buyersagent.
To everyone who is listening along, as Lorna said, reach out to her, lornawang.com.au. And if you have any questions for Property Showcase, just reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Until next time, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.